Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle. This is the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, the pilot, and then we use it to decide if we should watch the entire series. I always have to get out that little intro because half of you I know will basically switch off once you know that I'm not delving into the whole series. And I get it. Sometimes you want in-depth analysis. You want to hear people's thoughts and theories and conspiracies about the end of the series. But that's just not what we do here. But we do have fun discussing the first episode of a series. And if you are still listening, then please do me the honor of subscribing, sharing and rating now or later. I don't mind. Now, on this episode of The Pilot Principle, we are chatting episode 1 of Netflix's new comedy cozy crime series, The Residence. A brilliant, eccentric detective must solve a murder in the White House residence, where the staff and guests at a state dinner are all suspects. We all know that I absolutely love a whodunit, and The Residence is basically a whodunit on steroids. The poster says 132 rooms, 157 suspects, 1 dead body. I mean, don't quote me on this because I've actually never played the game, but it sounds like a giant game of Cluedo, and what could honestly be more fun than solving murders from the comfort of your own home? Before we get into the mystery at play in the pilot episode, let's talk credits, and we have a title. I think it's been a while since we had a pilot title. So the title of this pilot is The Fall of the House of Usher. The pilot synopsis tells us, at a congressional hearing, the story of a mysterious White House death and the brilliant detective hired to crack the case begins to unfold. We have an episode length of 51 minutes and a series length of 8 episodes. We can credit Paul William Davies as the series creator and pilot writer, and Davies is part of the Shondaland family, which is basically another reason why I wanted to watch The Residence. Davies created the short-lived Shondaland series For the People, which starred the guy from Bridgerton and Black Bag, Reggie something. Davies also wrote episodes of Scandal, which basically means that he knows the White House like the back of his hand. And he really proves it in the pilot episode. The pilot was directed by Liza Johnson, and Johnson has directed loads of random episodes of television. For example, she's directed episodes of Dead to Me, The Last of Us, and The Diplomat. Again, showing that she understands the political landscape. Moving on to cast, we first have Uzo Aduba, and Aduba plays Cordelia Cupp. Aduba has starred in Treatment, Painkiller, The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat, and I'm going to expose myself because I've actually never seen her most known role/series, and that is Orange is the New Black. I have recently thought about watching Orange is the New Black because I'm basically going back and watching all those old original Netflix series that I missed out the first time around. If you have seen Orange is the New Black and you've been listening for a while, let me know if you think I'm going to like it. The pilot also stars Susan Kelechi Watson as Jasmine Haney, and Watson has starred in Will Trent and This Is Us. Also, haven't seen either of those. Randall Park is also on the cast list and he plays Edwin Park. And Randall Park has starred in Young Rock, Fresh Off the Boat, WandaVision, and Always Be My Maybe. Finally, on the selected cast list, we have Ken Marino, who plays Harry Hollinger. And Marino has starred most recently in Candy Cane Lane, but he's also starred in Party Down, and he has starred in Veronica Mars, which is where I know him from. Not to leave anyone out, the pilot also stars Giancarlo Esposito, Eliza Coupe, Molly Griggs, Julian McMahon, and Kylie Minogue. Yeah. Kylie Minogue. And interesting fact about, I suppose, the series as a whole is that the episode titles are actually taken from murder mystery book/film. So I believe the next episode is called Dial M for Murder, which was the name of a Hitchcock film. And there's an episode called Knives Out, which is, of course, based on the recent film franchise, film series. Yeah, either way. Okie dokie. Now that's all out of the way, we can finally talk about the first 10 minutes. And the first 10 minutes of any pilot episode should work to stand on its own and convince the audience to watch the entire episode. And the first 10 minutes of The Fall of the House of Usher goes like this. while we glide through the halls of the White House to some sinister / jaunty Only Murder in the Building-esque soundtrack, thunder rumbles outside. Soon we're following AB. He passes colleagues in the hall and seems preoccupied. Then AB is in a room by himself and he asks somebody on the phone, "Who are you?" Then there is a knock on the door. And then we cut to a woman screaming her head off on discovering AB's dead body. And that all happens in the first 2 minutes. We skip forward to a few months later where Jasmine Haney, chief usher of the White House, is testifying in front of a congressional committee, whatever that means, and they want to know the truth behind the investigation of AB's murder because it has all been distorted since the event took place months prior. When the committee leader asks Jasmine, "How long have you been in this position?" it triggers a flashback to the day where the chief usher, AB, died, leaving a gap in the position for Jasmine to fill. A dead body equals the involvement of law enforcement, and that is where the best detective in the world, Cordelia Cupp, steps in. And that is about the 13-minute mark. And as an intro, it was okay. The jumping back and forth from the congressional hearing to the night of the murder threw me a little bit. They basically kind of ask a question in the present and then it's answered in the past. And yeah, it just takes a second to get used to. I do think that the first 10 minutes does a really good job of setting up the tone, but it's a bit of an odd contrast of sort of sinister / murderous and also comedy, but not black comedy. And again, it seems like another thing that will just take a little bit of time beyond the first 10 minutes to get used to. And the last thing to say about the first 10 minutes is that I thought it was a bit slow. I think some of the banter could have been cut to get us to Cordelia Cupp faster. We don't meet her until the end of those 13 minutes. And yeah, I just feel like the sooner the better, you know? And speaking of the sooner the better, we might as well get into talking about Cordelia Cupp because she's really the only person that we get any depth from in the pilot episode. And then afterwards, I'll do a bit of a general overview of some of the other major players because there are a few people knocking about in the pilot episode. So with Cordelia Cupp, firstly, great name for a detective. I'm here for it. It's not too whimsical, but it's interesting. You know, Cordelia Cupp is the kind of name you remember in a good way. And the name fits her because there is no one like her. She's confident, she's quietly observant, and she has the ability to filter out the noise of unwarranted opinions, of which there are many around her in the pilot episode. What Cordelia wants to do is to shut it down and figure out what is going on. She doesn't care about the politics, but the people around her do. And there is an Australian state dinner happening and they don't want it to get out that there's been a murder in the building because also apparently the current administration isn't very liked. Also, Cordelia mentions that she might have to miss her trip to Papua New Guinea to help out with the case. And so for her, the sooner she could, start doing her job without all the political tape, the better. Also, what I liked about Cordelia is that she is, she's here to solve a murder, of course, R.I.P. A.B. However, she's also low-key, high-key in the White House to do some bird watching. She's got a list or a bingo card of different birds that have been spotted on the White House grounds and she's trying to tick off that list while she's there. And that's cool, but crazy because I didn't know you could bird watch at night. Which does make me wonder if she's there doing something else, with her binoculars. But for now, I'm quite enjoying the whole bird watching thing she's got going on. Now, over the course of the pilot episode, Cordelia doesn't really change as a character. She does get increasingly frustrated that people aren't allowing her to do her job. But mostly, over the course of the episode, we get to see and other people get to see just how good she is at her job and the things she sees that everybody else misses. And in terms of her dynamic with the other people she comes across during this investigation, it's not that they don't like her, they're just politicians and the FBI, and they've got their own agendas. However, the chief of police of Washington, D.C., who essentially brought Cordelia onto the case, seems to like her, which is good because it means she does have somebody there on her side. In terms of the other characters we meet in the pilot episode, firstly, there is Jasmine, who is given the congressional hearing at the start. And she has had an argument with AB before he died. He was supposed to retire and she was supposed to take over, but then he changed his mind. And then she got drunk and said or did something that she says she regrets. I don't think she killed him though. That's all I'll say about that. I'm just not getting that vibe. I think she just is feeling an immense amount of guilt. And Jasmine's role within the pilot episode and probably going forward is to be Cordelia's guide to the White House. We then have Harry, and Harry is the president's BFF, and he basically spends the episode having a conniption about the murder and its effects on the Australian state dinner taking place downstairs. We do also see Harry rifling through AB's office looking for something? Question mark? Suspicious maybe? And I think Harry is just your standard entitled obstacle. He believes AB's death was by suicide and disagrees with Cordelia at every turn. And you kind of slowly just start to wonder over the episode why Harry is even in the room and what he brings to the table. And the final person to mention that Cordelia interacts with is Edwin. And Edwin is the FBI agent who doesn't really say much in the pilot episode, but his job is to watch Cordelia from an optics and legal perspective to make sure she doesn't do or say anything that could possibly, I don't know, look bad on the government / the White House, something political like that. Edwin seems pretty chill from the pilot episode, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out if he does have his own angle, which I'm sure you'd find out about if you choose to watch more than the pilot episode. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what my film and TV life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. And we're back, people. We can start with books because I have finally repicked up The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. I'm currently on page 67 and I will just keep you posted, page number wise, how I'm going. I think it's like a 500-page book, so it will be a while. But, you know, I'm just trying to get back into reading again. And this was inspired by my trip to 66 Books last weekend. And if you don't know, 66 Books is a massive book warehouse that has 70% off books. And I went once last year, picked up a bunch of books, went again this year, picked up a handful of books. It's just a really fun day out. If you obviously like books or reading. If you don't like books or reading, you will find it a very dull day out. Okay, moving on to film, and I've watched a couple, not a lot. I finally watched Missing, which is the, not sequel per se, but the similar story structure as the movie, cripes, what's it called? Searching, that came out a few years ago. So this one stars Storm Reid, her, and she's searching for her mum who's gone missing. Loved it. Great movie. Not as good as Searching, but definitely on that same level. I think it's just so inventive having everything play out on screen, and it speaks to the technological age we're all in, and yeah, just a great time all around. I then watched The Electric State, which was on Netflix, and that is, I watched Missing on Netflix as well, FYI. So The Electric State, the new Netflix film that stars Millie Bobby Brown and one of the Chris's, I want to say Pratt. And considering it was getting quite negative reviews, I think it was fine. Not the best thing in the world. I can understand why the budget was so high because of all the robots they get to move around, but I mean, it was a fine Sunday evening watch. Would I watch it again? No. Was it okay? Yes. And the final film I have recently watched is, it was a cinema film too. I watched Black Bag, and this is the movie that stars Michael Fassey and Cate Blanchett. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it kind of made me want to throw a dinner party. Bring some popcorn and just, see how the dice rolls. No, it was a really interesting film. Surprisingly, I didn't see much advertisement for it, but yeah, if you're thinking about watching Black Bag, it's very British, very enjoyable, just a nice, easy, succinct hour-and-a-half watch. Okay, moving over to TV land, and just a couple of things to mention. I'm back on my parenthood watch where everybody needs to be constantly reassured that they're doing a good job as a parent. I am now on Silo Series 2, and let's just say things are heating up, rebellion-wise. And finally, I finished watching Adolescence. Adolescence I did the pilot review of last time, And it was only 4 episodes. And yeah, gosh, it was so good. It's also interesting having watched the entire series, seeing how wrong I was during some of my series predictions. But that's what series predictions are for. They're a bit of fun, a bit of guesswork. And it's not necessarily like I'm going to be right all the time. But if I am, great. And if I'm not, great. But really, really interesting watch. I think an important watch too. So if you haven't watched Adolescence yet on Netflix, then do it. Okay, that's everything. As usual, you can read my reviews on justjensreviews.com, or you can find me over on Letterboxd, justgen02. Be sure to let me know what you're watching or reading over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principal. And yeah, let's just get back into talking about The Residents. Before we talk about the end of episode Hook, let's outline some plot points and, most importantly, the investigation thus far. So the main storyline in The Residents is, of course, who killed AB, the whodunnit, and why. The whydunnit. The second storyline, which they massively allude to, is to do with politics. So the Morgan administration is apparently in freefall, and they're trying to make nice with the Australians who also hate them for some reason. So that's sort of the undercurrent of the pilot episode. And who knows, possibly it could affect something to do with the main storyline, but it also could not. And it's just a thing that's going on. And in terms of any C plots, I think any C plots will likely involve the process of elimination of every suspect, because everyone is hiding something. That's just how it works. It just won't be murder 99% of the time. Case-wise, in the pilot episode, Cordelia realises that AB is wearing a shirt that's not his shirt, covered in blood that's not his blood. Also, that his death was made to look like a suicide, but the scene doesn't add up to look like suicide. Instead, Cordelia believes that AB was poisoned, which is, of course, the perfect segue, because we love a segue here, into the end of episode Hook. So, Cordelia realises that someone in the Australian government, it's either the foreign minister or the ambassador, I wasn't sure which character was which. Either way, one of them is wearing AB's shirt, his actual shirt, and not covered in blood. Because of this, President Morgan, who initially denied Cordelia's request of not letting anybody leave the White House until she's interviewed everybody, shuts down the White House. He said nobody is leaving until they find the murderer. And that's interesting that the Australian involvement made him change his mind. Now, overall, I think it's a good, clear ending that helps us to see where the rest of the series is possibly going. We haven't really learned anything about anyone suspect-wise, but we understand that all of that is to come. Now, in terms of a series prediction, there's not really enough for me to guess who done it and why done it, but I can say that I guess that the series will take place over one night or 8 hours perhaps. 7 hours left after the pilot episode. As I mentioned, Cordelia says that she has a plane to catch, so maybe that will also impact how quickly everybody wants this case to be solved. Moving on to what I liked about the pilot episode, I liked Cordelia Cupp. Cordelia Cupp is cool. She is just effortless, and I feel like she just doesn't have imposter syndrome, which I love for her. Also, she's quirky, but not in that stereotypical manner that they usually do with women. She's not like clumsy, and she doesn't wear weird mismatched bright clothing and say crazy one-liners. She's quirky in a very individualistic, understated way, which I think is the same for most quirky people. Not every quirky person mixes orange and bright pink and wears funny hats. I don't know. What I also liked about the pilot episode is the point of view of the residents and its staff, because that's quite a new spin, and by Jove, it's a good idea. The Residence is not the East Wing or the West Wing of the White House, and the staff of the Residence are not in any way politically affiliated. The Residence, as the name suggests, is where the president lives and where his family lives, and it's the area in which events are held. Who knew? To me, it's all the White House, except for the West Wing, which is where, the Oval Office is, according to Aaron Sorkin's West Wing. I'm curious about what goes down in the East Wing though now, but that's fine. That's another series in the making. And the last thing that I really liked about the pilot episode is that there's this dollhouse perspective we get of the White House, which is really bloody amazing. We get views from the side, from the top, we fly through rooms. I feel like the creators want us to really understand the layout and the size of the residence, which could of course help us to try and solve the murder ourselves. But yeah, it's just really cool. Just imagine a dollhouse where, you like can open the walls of the front and you're looking into those individual rooms. You can just have a broad overview of every room and things like that, and open the roof and look at everything from the top and take out the different layers. That's what it's like. And it just looks so cool. I know I've said the word cool so many times in this episode, but it's just so cool. In terms of the things I didn't like, I was surprised by how slow the pilot was. I did lose focus at a few points, and I think the way that they kept cutting from the congressional hearing and the different speakers at the congressional hearing to the past, which is where the investigation of AB's murder is taking place, I did find it all a bit discombobulating at times. It just wasn't clean. So it gave me whiplash and sometimes brought me out of the story. In terms of a bit of a comparative with other shows, I would say that The Residence reminds me of Only Murders in the Building meets Knives Out, which isn't a bad combo, actually, because I liked both those things. Right, enough about me, it's time for you to shine. So I would say that if you liked cozy mysteries / Hallmark mysteries, then The Residence might be for you. Also, if you like witty comedy, then this also might be for you because it's a little silly, but it's not slapstick or overly ridiculous, which I personally abhor. On the flippity flip side, if you prefer a gritty crime drama or generally prefer a more serious tone to your shows, then The Residence will not be for you. Also, there are so many people around. Like so many, and I know that's a really specific thing to mention, but you might perhaps prefer a show that focuses on a small pool of suspects or a small town filled with small secrets or something. So those are some things to keep in mind as to reasons why you might not like The Residence. Last thing for me to do is to give the pilot episode, The Fall of the House of Usher. Great title because AB was the chief usher and he fell into a vat of poison. I don't know, but he fell dead. So yeah, great title. I love when they put thought into things like the titles. So good. Anyway, right, pilot score. I will be giving this a 3 out of 5. I think The Residence has managed to find its niche in the oversaturated murder mystery genre. Cordelia is a great character and I can't wait to see more of her quirks and her working practices. The pilot really reminds me of a Hallmark movie or Hallmark mystery movie, and by that I mean it's an easy watch but it doesn't quite pack any punch, and that's why I think the pilot episode is fine. Not groundbreaking, not great, but fine. Thanks for joining me this week. Will you be continuing with The Residence? I think I'm going to give episode 2 a watch, but let me know what you decide over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle, and I will catch you on the next episode. Aww.